Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I want to do a quick video testing video of the different formats that the Canon EOS M50 has. Right now I have it in front of me, it's what I'm recording with, and I wanted to show you guys some test footage. The main things I wanted to show you guys was the 120 frames per second, the 4K video. There's also there's a 4K video without the image stabilization, which reduces some crop. So I wanted to show you some of the differences between that. And I also wanted to show you the 60 frames per second in 1080p. The 60 frames per second in 720p, in my opinion, is really irrelevant, so I don't really want to test that one out. Alright, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into testing. So the video right here that you're seeing, this is 1080p and 24 frames per second. This is exactly what it looks like. So now let's go ahead and switch over to 1080p and 30 frames per second. Okay, this is exactly how it looks in 30 frames per second. 30 frames per second at 1080p. The lens that I'm using is the 10 to 18 millimeter with an EFS adapter to EFM body. So this is why it looks the way it does. I'm using a wide angle lens. I don't have the 11 to 22, unfortunately, so I'm not really able to give you a real test of that. Okay, now let's go ahead and switch to the 1080p at 60 frames per second. Okay, so now we're doing 60 frames per second at 1080p. The cool thing about this is you can do really good slow motion. For instance, we'll slow this down. And I'll do that in post. I probably already did it, so kudos to me. So yeah, this is how the 1080p looks at 60 frames per second. And now what we're going to do is we're going to switch it over to 4K and show you guys how that looks. This is the EOS M50 with the 4K video with the image stabilization enabled. The previous videos with 1080p, the image stabilization was all disabled, so you had a wider field of view. So what the Canon EOS M50 does is for the image stabilization, it uses digital image stabilization to be able to give you stable shots. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to test out the video of the 4K without the image stabilization, just to show you how it looks without the crop of the image stabilization. Okay, so this is how it looks without the image stabilization crop. Not very much of a difference, but it is better. I will say for vlogging, the 4K is actually usable without the image stabilization crop. It's about arm's distance away at this point right here. This is how it looks. So, I mean, it's not too bad. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna enable the enhanced version of image stabilization. I'm not really sure how that works, but we're gonna enable it to see what the difference is as well. All right, this is the enhanced version of the image stabilization. I have no idea what exactly it does, but this is the enhanced version. I imagine that this version actually works better with the lenses on the EFM body and the EFM lenses. From what I heard, there's a gyro image stabilization that happens with those. So I'm not sure exactly how it works, but this is what it is. This right here is arm's length away, just like before. So you can kind of see how it looks as a vlogger 4K footage. All right, now what we're gonna do is gonna jump into the 120 frames per second, and I'll show you how that looks in 120 frames per second. We're probably gonna do some slow-mo shots, mainly because that's usually what you use it for. I did also want to point out that when you do 120 frames per second, the EOS M50 automatically converts that file to the slow motion. So when you have the high-speed recording, it's going to convert into slow motion, not like the iPhone or other cameras where you have to modify that post-recording. Just a little information for you guys. Alright guys, that's the video testing for today. I did want to go over some cool stuff with that. These are all the video settings that I think are relevant with the Canon EOS M50. I actually think that the 120 frames per second is pretty usable if you're using it in your vlogs and you don't want to buy a 5D Mark IV or a 1DX to be able to get 120 frames per second in 1080p. You could probably go to other cameras like the GH5 and other higher end cameras, but for this price point, I think it's actually pretty usable. Also, I'd like to say that the 4K crop is actually reduced largely whenever you disable the image stabilization. I don't know if I really need the image stabilization. I didn't really use it on my other cameras. My 70D and other cameras have never really had it, so I've never really missed it. So at this point, maybe I can try it without the image stabilization. The lens itself already has image stabilization built in as well, so that may not be an issue. Well guys, that's it for today. However, I did want to show a little bit more of the 120 frames per second doing some Peter McKinnon style B-roll footage.